Hi again. Week 2, you will be reading about the biological process of aging, which is presented in Moody and Sasser as a controversy. Now, you may wonder, why is that a controversy? We all know that we're aging. We all know that our bodies are changing and that there are undisputable signs, physical signs of aging. The controversy comes in terms of explaining how our bodies are aging and what exactly is going on inside of our bodies as we age. The readings this week will introduce several theories around this process, and I want you to be sure to understand what they are. The wear and tear theory um, puts forward that our bodies are kind of like an old car, or they're like a car, and the older that the car gets, things get rusty and worn out and fall off, and that's really what is happening to our bodies. Kind of going along with that, there's a theory that is the aging clock theory, which basically says our bodies are programmed to age. So it's not one thing that's happening, it's just a program that are in our DNA that makes our bodies change. There is the autoimmune theory, which is essentially that your body starts getting attacked by free radicals, and that's actually what's causing cell die-off. So they're all very interesting in and of themselves. And I do wonder, if we take bits and pieces of each one of these theories, if it isn't just a little bit of all of these things that are going on, and not versus just one specific thing. There is a question that is raised this week about whether or not aging is a disease. That's kind of a fascinating thing to think about. Most gerontologists believe that aging is not a disease. It's not something that should be cured or fixed or reversed, or can be cured or fixed or reversed. However, the medical community does see that a little differently. So there is controversy around whether or not we need to be thinking about aging as a disease. So I want you to think about that as well, and what you think after you've read the materials this week. I want you to understand what the hypothesis about the compression of morbidity is. And the reason I think that's important is because, as our society is aging, the current cohort of elderly people are aging differently than people from the previous cohort. So what are those differences, and how are they going to impact society, and what are some of the things that we need to think about? So understand what that theory is. And I want you to also understand, how do we go about, as gerontologists, measuring good health in elderly? What are the key indicators of good health? And I want you to understand what those are and how we evaluate that in the elderly population. Then I want you to think about, how long do you want to live? There are readings introduced this week that actually state that there is enough scientific research that's happening that could actually extend our lives to 120 years, maybe even 1,000 years. So that's just a huge thing to think about. And do people really want to live that long? And there's an article that I posted in this week from the Pew Research Center. Very interesting. The Research Center has done some research around this very issue. How long do you want to live? Why or why not? So that is the content of the discussion board this week. Think about that for a minute. What are the implications for you about thinking about living to be 120 years old? Think about the financial issues with that. Think about the psychological issues and the social issues around living to be that long. So kind of an interesting thing to think about, I think. Um, and and the last thing is, there's also a video this week from a researcher called, his name is Dan Buettner, and he has done research in areas across the world called the blue zones. And the blue zones are areas across the world where there's a concentration of people who live to be much older than the average population. So he has gone into these blue zone areas and he has explored and talked with the people about their lifestyle, about the culture, about their diet. And it's a really, really fascinating research that he's done. So I hope you enjoy the blue zones. And part of the discussion board for this week also is just your reflections on that video and on the blue zones. And are there things that in America that we could do that might be able to adapt some of these things that he's learned from the blue zones and apply them here in the United States? So that is the summary for this week 2. Again, questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, I will see you in week 3. Take care. Thanks.